You want to buy a home in Japan, but you have so many questions about going through the process. Don't worry. I've helped over 150 foreigners buy properties in Japan, and I've heard all the questions. Here are the top most commonly asked questions about buying property in Japan. Let's go. Okay, so one of the questions we get asked quite often is, are old Akiya safe in earthquakes? And how much does it cost to retrofit to make sure it's earthquake proof? And are there safer areas? So those are kind of loaded questions, but 3 questions in one, but let me answer one by one. So the famous 1981 cutoff. So if the house was signed off after June 1st of 1981, that means it passed the new law or the current law for earthquake standards. So as an example, like this house is for sure older than 1981, just by the look of it. I don't know it's been retrofitted, but the point is it's still standing pretty soundly. It's gone through a bunch of minor and probably quite a few medium earthquakes. So it's standing okay. So the most important thing isn't about the year. Sure, you can get peace of mind for buying something newer, but that doesn't mean everything. So this is an apartment complex, definitely newer than 1981. Very likely it's not a wooden structure. So it's concrete. Light concrete, so it's very durable, and apartments tend to do better in that case. Maybe that apartment looks a little bit older. That's probably wooden structure, I'm guessing, so not as durable. But the point is, a lot of these houses survive through a bunch of earthquakes. That's what matters. And how much does it cost to get it retrofitted? I've never experienced it personally myself, but based on my research, it costs about 1.5 million on average for an average 1-story, 2-story home, wooden structure home, which is about $10,000. But it really depends on how much work it's required. So it can't be 2 million, 3 million, 20 grand, 30 grand, but that's kind of like the ballpark of how much it's going to cost to retrofit your house, an old house. And how much does it cost to get the evaluation? Again, I haven't gotten this personally, but based on my research, it's about 250,000 yen for like an official evaluation of what needs to get done. So, it's up to you if you want to get one. Again, it's more about how it was built and who built the house, more than just the year it was built. Okay, so are there safer areas? Probably, but Japan is an island, and pretty much everywhere in Japan, there are some sort of earthquake activities. Maybe Hokkaido, based on my personal experience, it doesn't happen that often, but people have been saying the past 40 years, there's going to be a huge earthquake in Greater Tokyo. It hasn't really happened yet, but it happened in elsewhere where we least expected. So it could happen anywhere, but there are websites where the government talks about the safer or more shaking areas of Japan. So I highly suggest you to check that out before moving forward with the house. So the next one is, can I buy an Akiya and turn it into a rental property? The answer is absolutely, and that's exactly what I do. To make it simple, let me just give you the numbers from my portfolio. So this property that I bought last year, so I bought this for 7 million yen with closing costs and everything, and I put in about 3.5 million yen for the light renovations. I also put a new toilet seat, added a couple of air conditioning units. It's not required, by the way, in Japan as a landlord. You don't have to get appliances, but I did for this one. So all-in cost was 10.5 million, and the rent that I'm collecting right now is 100,000 yen per month from my tenant. So that's 1.2 million yen of gross annual income, which would be about 11.4% return gross yield. So what's the net? I get that question all the time. That's fine. Profit. So minus insurances, taxes, maintenance, a vacancy, it's going to be around between 6 and 8% net. So that's cash flow. Okay, so I'll give you another example. So I bought this house last year as well, also spent about 7 million yen to purchase and for the closing costs. For this one, it was even more distressed, so I put in a little bit more than the last one. So I put in 4 million yen for the renovations. I changed the toilet from the Japanese style toilet to a Western style toilet, and I added a couple of AC units as well. So total 11 million yen. I have a tenant, and the tenant's paying me 105,000 yen per month. You can't do the math, but I think it's about 11 something percent gross yield. So very similar to the last one. So after taxes, insurance, maintenance, and vacancy, again, it's about 7% cash flow net. So that's what I like. And this doesn't mean guarantee that's what you're going to get. Again, 7% for a lot of people, that could be a good number, a decent number. Some people might not be excited about 7% cash on cash return. You know, you might as well just put it in S&P 500. I prefer this one because it is actually cash coming in every month, and you own, you know, a piece of Japan real estate as well. You take on more risks, but I prefer that. So that's what I expect. If you have a nicer home, your return will drop. You know, if you are willing to take more risks, you know, your return might increase. So that's what you can expect from Akiya investing. Okay, so the next one, does Japanese real estate appreciate or depreciate over time? So let me explain this one separately for land and also structure. So land in shrinking areas, so like rural Japan, say, you know, far from Tokyo or major cities, the land will depreciate. Okay, so the land loses value as you hold it longer. But if you own it in prime areas, for example, where I am now, so I'm in Yokohama. So the majority of areas of Yokohama, especially if it's closer to like stations and major areas, the land is still appreciating. If you go to central Tokyo, the land appreciates like crazy. Okay, so it's just like any other major cities in the world. Structure for the most part depreciates over time. I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? Like brand new, it's like really new, valuable, and the longer you hold it, it depreciates. To me, that makes sense. But, you know, in places like in the US, the structure itself actually appreciates, and that's how you get capital gains, right? I think the biggest difference between, say, the US real estate and the Japanese real estate in terms of liquidity, you know, value, is that the most value of real estate in Japan is held in land. The value of real estate, both structure and land, I'd say like around 70-80% is in the land, and the 20-30% is in the structure. So as long as the land is holding value, you're good, and then you have real estate in appreciating areas. That's a good sign. Wherein I think in the US, most value is actually in the structure, right? Like 60-70-80% depending on where you are, but the land doesn't hold that much value. So that's kind of flipped. So that is probably like one of the biggest differences when it comes to value in real estate. Okay, so the next question, can foreigners, residents and non-residents buy real estate in Japan? So that's the whole theme of this channel. I keep talking about this. The short answer is yes, absolutely. And there are no nationality-based bans on being able to buy property in Japan. So that's a good sign. So anyone, regardless of nationality, can buy real estate in Japan today, as of 2025, which means this might change depending on when you're watching this. Japan is trying to be a little bit more strict on this, and it's a hot topic. Who knows how long it might take? Maybe 6 months, maybe 2 years, maybe 10 years. I doubt there's gonna be like a hard ban on foreigners. I don't think it's gonna happen, but it might happen something like stamp duty, like extra taxes for non-residents buying property in Japan. That's a very possibility, but as of now, anyone can buy real estate with the same limitations or same rights, so same taxes, whatever, as a Japanese citizen and a resident. So the next question we get a lot is, if I buy a property in Japan, do I get a visa or residency? The answer is no. And a lot of people say, well, why would I buy property or home in Japan if I can't even get a visa or residency? Well, I think those are two separate things. If you want to see it positively, you can get a property without a visa or residency. And that alone is a pretty cool thing, in my opinion. But if you want a visa, there's a whole topic around this, and I'm planning to do one because it's a hot topic as well. But to answer this question, unfortunately, you won't get a visa or residency by just getting real estate in Japan. So you're gonna wanna start a visa, or you're gonna wanna get a permanent job in Japan who can sponsor you a visa, or you can marry a Japanese spouse and get a residency that way. Okay, so the next question is, what are the hidden fees and closing fees? Well, first of all, I wouldn't call them hidden fees because they are disclosed before the closing. So you know what it's gonna be going into it. So let me break it down, those closing fees though. So the first one is agent fee. We call it chukai tesuryō. This is 3% of the property purchase price plus 60,000 yen plus 10% tax. However, there's an exception. If the property is 8 million yen or under, it's a flat fee. So 330,000 yen is chukai tesuryō agent fee. This is a relatively newer law as of 2024. And this is to incentivize agents to sell cheaper homes, aka Akiya houses. And so that, it's still $2,000 and not a whole lot of money for so much work, so that they're guaranteed to get something for a very cheap house. So that's the main reason. The next up is title fee or judicial scrivener fee. So this also depends on the property price, but for an affordable homes around like $100,000, $200,000 homes, it's going to be in between 200,000 yen and 400,000 yen. Sometimes, it's a little less than 500,000, but those judicial scriveners are a little bit more on the pricey side, but also it tends to happen when the property price is higher. And the next one is property tax. And this is prorated. And depending on the region, the cutoff is different. So for example, Greater Tokyo, the cutoff is the calendar year. So if you buy a property in October, you're only paying for October, November, and December. So 3 months worth of property tax for that year. And you're not going to be charged until the following April. But if you're buying in Kyoto or Western Japan, as far as I'm concerned, the cutoff is April. The fiscal year is different. So if you buy something, say in May, you're paying for 11 months worth of property prorated tax. I'm going to explain what that tax rate is going to be in a different question. So that's what you can expect at the closing if you're buying a house. But if you're buying a condo or apartment unit, there will be a HOA, aka management fee. So it really depends on what kind of property you get, but probably anywhere between 10,000 to like 30,000 yen per month or something like that. And finally, the real estate acquisition tax. This is often forgotten. It's a one-time tax that you get hit, usually after about 4 to 6 months of the purchase, the closing. And this is between 3 and 4% of the assessed value. I usually pay because I buy something around $100,000 or 10 million, 50 million yen. I usually pay around between 200 and 300,000 yen for this acquisition tax. So those are the closing costs plus a tax, a one-time tax that you can expect at the closing and a few months after the closing. Okay, so the next one is what are the ongoing annual fees? So the first up is property taxes, the annual property taxes. So I mentioned about the prorated tax that you're going to have to pay at the closing, but this one is an ongoing one. So usually you're going to get hit by an annual property tax in April, at least in this area of, Greater Tokyo area. The rate is 1.4% of the assessed value for the fixed asset tax. And then the other one is city planning tax. It's at 0.3% of the assessed value. And so if you just combine that, 1.7% of the assessed value. How much is it? Again, it really depends, but compared to most clients and members that we deal with, it's significantly low, especially if you're buying affordable homes here. So like something around $200,000. It's going to be very low because it's only 1.7% of the assessed value. The other one is insurance. So how much is insurance? So this also depends on what you're getting insured for. So like the amount of the coverage, right? I usually get a 5-year policy, so you can lock in a lower rate, which is awesome. Like I don't think I could do that in the US for my properties there. And then there, the insurance prices seem to keep going up. Here, you can actually lock in a lower rate than paying annually. So I always do that. It's more money up front, but you don't have to worry about paying for insurance for 5 years. How much is it? I usually pay for my Akiyas like anywhere between 300 and 500,000 yen for 5 years. So that's maybe, 100,000 yen per year or less. So that's about $700 per year for insurance. The next one is utilities. If you have a rental property, you don't have to worry about paying for utilities unless you have a multifamily and you want to, as a landlord, you want to take care of the utilities. But for the most part, you don't have to because your tenant will pay for the utilities. But if you own a vacation home or a second primary home, you can probably expect somewhere around 5,000 to 20,000 yen per month for electricity, gas, and water for maybe a couple or a family of 4. And given that you're staying at the property for the whole month. So that's probably maximum around like $140 or something like that. Property management. If you have a rental property, most property management companies charge you 5% for the management fee. So 5% of the rental income that you generate. And they put 10% consumption tax. So you can think of it as 5.5% of the rent. So that's a usual standard. If you don't have a Japanese bank account, that's more work on them. So the fees might increase a little bit. But for standard, if you have a Japanese bank account, 5% is the property management fee. If you have a vacation home, it varies depending on what kind of service you want from that vacation property manager. You can expect probably somewhere around 20 to 30,000 yen per month for airing out, basic cleaning, paying for bills, taking care of taxes and all that stuff. To me, I think that's a necessity, peace of mind, especially if you're not going to be here all the time. So there's someone that's taking care of your property in Japan for that cost. I think it's totally worth it. It's totally worth it, especially if you don't have a family or a friend who can do that instead of a property manager. And even if you do, I make sure to compensate them, whether it's money or omiyage, souvenirs, or something else, because that's still a lot of work. Okay, so the next question is, how can I get a mortgage in Japan as a foreigner? You can get a mortgage as a foreigner as long as you live in Japan, you're a resident of Japan. So that's probably the only way or the easiest way to get a mortgage from a Japanese bank. If you're non-resident, it is going to be very difficult for you, especially if you're trying to get a mortgage from a Japanese bank. The only exception, I would say, you can get a mortgage from your home country's bank as a HELOC or something like that. You're still getting a loan to buy a property in Japan. So I would say that's the only way. But a lot of people do ask about getting mortgages in Japan because interest rates are super low. So if you really want that, I suggest you to get a job in Japan, reside here so that you can get a bank account and you can prove to a Japanese bank that you have a stable income in Japan and you can qualify for a loan. Otherwise, I would recommend you to establish a business, and you probably are going to have consecutive solid years as a business so that you can prove to a Japanese bank that your company reliably produces income so that you can borrow from those banks. I would say those are the only two ways as a foreigner to get a Japanese mortgage. So the next question is, can I Airbnb the property when I'm not there? First of all, I prefer to use the term short-term rentals because Airbnb, it's a brand. It's interchangeably used for short-term rentals, but there are many other sites you can post your short-term rentals. Anyway, in order to do that in Japan, you have to have a minpaku license or hotel license to operate as a short-term rental. And for a minpaku license, for the most part, you can only operate 180 nights per year. So that's about a half year. And if you have a hotel license, the requirements are a little bit higher, more difficult, but you can operate 365 days a year. So it's up to you which way you want to go. But my suggestion, so to be very frank, I haven't done it in Japan. My parents do it, so I know it from secondhand, how they operate and how hard it was to do it. I would say short-term rentals, it's not really a real estate play. It's more of a hospitality business. So you need a very strong operator. I would make sure, one, if your property is in the right zone for minpaku or hotel license. So that's really, really important because a lot of central Tokyo basically bans minpaku. So it's very hard to do. And if there's a demand, right? And if you're targeting foreigners, are you targeting locals? You need to know all that stuff before committing to buying a house. So I would say that's the most important thing. And two, make sure you have a strong operator who's done this before. It's very different from long-term rentals or even mid-term rentals, right? Where you have a property manager. It's a lot less hands-on, but still requires property management. Short-term rentals, again, it's a hospitality business. So you need to make sure if you're not the one who's managing it, you need to have someone who has a track record of doing great operations for short-term rentals. Okay, so the next question is there a central heat and air? The short answer is no. So in Japan, it's mostly cultural because it uses up a lot of resources to do central heating, right? So even if you're in one room, if you have central heating or air, that means the entire house is warm or cold. And a lot of people think that's a waste. So like my mom, who's 76 years old, every time she comes to my house, she turns basically off or turns up the AC temperature, even though it's really hot. She thinks it's wasting energy, but more importantly, a lot of people, older people, believe that air conditioning is actually bad for your health. So I think that's a big reason. And another reason is kazetoshi, so circulation. Because of the size of most houses in Japan, we don't have very spacious space to put ductwork. And that's why walls are not often older homes are not insulated so that it doesn't get molded. So that's another reason. But I think the resources thing or the culture thing is a bigger reason. Sometimes I wish there was central heating or central air because it is super hot in the summertime, as you might know. But I also grew up with the mentality of, hey, use less resources because resources are limited. So that kind of stuck with me as well. So I understand why we have that. But newer homes are better insulated in Japan, but still you got to put air conditioning on every single room, as opposed to just one central heating or air. So there you have it. I hope that answered all your questions, or hopefully most of them. If that didn't, make sure to visit akiyahub.com and give us your questions there. We will answer those questions one by one. Or you can just continue to leave comments on my YouTube or other social media platforms. But anyway, if you're interested in buying a home, whether it's rental property or a vacation home or primary home, you know where to reach us, akiyahub.com, and hope to see you there. If you enjoyed this video, I think you're gonna like this one too. So watch this video next for more. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.